Welcome to the Fifth Trooper Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Fifth Trooper Podcast. We're back, and guess who's with me? It's Evan.
Hey, it's your boy. How's it going?
Good. Hey, Evan, I got a little something for you here. You ready?
Oh, okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Where'd you find that?
Ace Frehley, man.
It's
Yeah, we're back. I only played a few minutes, so we don't get the old
the
kibosh
strike.
A few seconds there, but yeah, we're back. I think this is season 4 or whatever maniac numbers I'm giving things these days. And I'm so excited to be back with Evan. And I just want to start this before we get into our housekeeping. I just want to start this and kind of paint a picture of what this new Fifth Trooper podcast is going to be. You know, Evan and I, since Evan, we stopped doing the Fifth Trooper podcast really because we got busy. And then I did the beginners cast, and then I kind of stopped for the last few months because I got put on Scoundrels because we lost Zach. And then we've been very busy, but Evan and I play still all the time, play Legion, and we hang out all the time still. And one of the things I think, Evan, would you agree, we kind of came to it at the same time? We were both like, hey, when did we stop playing this game just for fun?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about it today, but like about a month ago now, Evan and I went to a local tournament and we played Highlander lists, and we'll tell you what that is if you haven't heard yet. But it was the most fun I've had playing the game in a long time. And so that just kind of kickstarted me into this thought, and the fact that Stormtide is doing so well that I just realized, hey, there's a lot of guys like us who aren't like, like Mike and Kyle doing the math all the time. Mike and Kyle from the Scoundrels doing the math all the time on how they can best play this game, that there's just guys like us who are like, I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So that's what this podcast is going to be about. Ideally, we're going to talk about how to infuse fun back into your playing. We're going to talk about the hobby side a lot more than we ever have. And then we may just go on crazy little diatribes and conversations about, I don't know, could be anything. So I just hope you guys stay for the ride. It will be a majority of Star Wars Legion conversation here, of course, but it could go anywhere. All right.
Fair.
So let's get into some housekeeping real quick on the front end here. So Evan, since you retired and hung up your gloves for season 1 and 2 of the Fifth Trooper podcast, what have you been doing? What have you been up to?
So mostly what I do now is I stream on Twitch, because everybody streams on Twitch now. That's just turns out every actor, everything is like, cool, catch me on Twitch on So I jumped on that bandwagon. So I've been doing that. I am kind of a variety streamer, so I just kind of do like whatever. Mostly I play games, but I've got an easel set up. I'd like to start painting pictures. I've got a copy of a single player pen and paper called The 1,000-Year Vampire. Really cool. So I'd like to play that with stream. So I just kind of do like whatever, right? Whatever I feel like it's fun.
What's the address so people can go check it out?
I am space_husky on Twitch. So go to Twitch,
Husky,
space_husky, and you'll see this guy in the background. And if you watch me long enough, I'll make you your own custom raccoon. I actually had somebody do that for the first time, and that's a lot of fun. But yeah, that's what I've been kind of doing. I've been bouncing around like our friend of the channel, Pat Murphy, is doing a new podcast. He's called Recommendable. So it's we talk about like I'm a co-host on that with him. It's like our first one's going to be James Bond, and so we go through like our favorite movies, and then hey, if you like James Bond, here are like movies, and then here's some other media, like here's a comic book you think you should read, here's a game I think you should play, like here's a board game we like. So kind of doing that too. So yeah, I'm all over the place.
Yeah, I'll say I guess I was going to say I'm subscribed, but really the Fifth Trooper is subscribed on Twitch to Evan's channel. And every time I get a notice, it's like some he's doing something random, and I'm like, wait, what's going on? And then I go tune in, and like, what was last week? You were making a raccoon into Bowsette or whatever, and I'm just what is happening here? And
so yeah, that's really funny because it's the first one I had was when the first one I ever did. Well, someone got the marker, and I'm thinking, I take a raccoon, I Photoshop him out, so it's just like the PNG, so it's a clear background raccoon, and I'm thinking like, hey, you won, pal. Do you want a little spaceman? Do you want a little cowboy? I got a little pistol. Like something generic, right? I'm like, hey, do you want to be a little Santa Claus? And he's like, I want the main character from Silent Hill 1. And I'm like, oh, so I made it. We got through it. Then when my next person won, I'm like, hey, you want a little, like spaceman? I got old timey space helmet I can put on this guy. I want Bowsette. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Right. Like,
I love it.
I just want like, you want a little cowboy holding a 6-shooter, pal? Like, it's all these like elaborate asks, which is fun though. That makes it like, you never know what I'm going to get. And, it comes out like, it goes from like really bad looking to it kind of jumps the shark back to cool. So it becomes funny and everyone likes it and it's a good time. But I just got to do whatever. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. Well, so you could check Evan out on his Twitch channel, space_husky. A little bit more housekeeping. If you listen to the Scoundrels or see any of other stuff, I always plug our Patreon. We do have a Patreon, the Fifth Trooper, over on Patreon. And basically what that support does is it helps us, host the podcasts that we do. It helps us pay the blog writers. They're not just doing that out of the kindness of their hearts. We pay them. And so if you want to support us in all the content that we create, you could do that on Patreon. And then a little plug for this. So this podcast, I don't know where you're listening or watching, but it's going to be available wherever podcasts are available, but then also YouTube. So this is going to be a video version. So if you're a subscriber on our Podbean or iTunes or Spotify, we also have a video version of this that'll be available on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube and you want an audio version, go wherever podcasts can be found. And then also, if you guys haven't had a chance, go check out Stormtide. That's our Legion narrative campaign, monthly sub box that comes with all kinds of crazy stuff. Box 1 had miniatures and objective cards and all kinds of other cards. Box 2, same thing. We've got upgrades in there. We've got all kinds of cool stuff. And then roughly every quarter is kind of a new I wouldn't say story, but a new chapter in the story. And at the beginning of every quarter, we're putting miniatures in the boxes. So check that out. And it's going to get even crazier here coming in box 4, which comes out in November. And so check that out as well. And then, do all the sub stuff. Follow us on Twitter, on the Facebook. I a few months ago started an Instagram page. So we're on Instagram posting all kinds of random stuff there. So that's all our housekeeping.
Done. Easy. Done. Cleaned house.
So this next section, we're calling Playing for Fun. And we're going to talk about Star Wars Legion and how we play for fun, how you can inject some more fun into your games, and really what this whole game is about, right? Is having a good time with your buds, having a little beer and pizza, and enjoying Star Wars Legion. Right, Evan?
Just enjoying it.
Just enjoy it, right?
Yeah, it's funny
doing
that because we talk about this, and it's man, being greasy in these games is tiring, right? Yeah. Like best lists, best things. Like now, Dewbacks are popular. Like I remember watching an Invader League game. It was like Vader triple Dewbacks versus Vader triple Dewbacks. I'm like, man, I don't want any part of that anymore. Like I'm just like I'm good, right? So a while ago when we went to this event first time in a while, Jay and I did to the Just Games, great store, by the way,
Rochester, New York. Yeah,
awesome store. I'm like, hey, because we were both going into it and it's been a while, and like we want to do well, but we don't want to like scrub out, right? So it's like a balancing act of like, well, I have to take 3 shores. I have to take 3. You have to do like, I have to take this. So I said, hey, why don't we put a restriction on what we can take? And so how that went was, all right, let's do Highlander. So one of each thing. It works better for the OG factions, but what you can do, the other like variant of this rule, Jay and I were playing OG, like the original faction, so Rebels and Empire, so we had plenty of things to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
But what you can do to twist this for the other factions too is just you can only take one of each upgrade in unit, except the core unit, like phase ones or B1s.
Stormtroopers.
Yeah, stormtroopers or rebel troopers. You can take multiple versions of those. You just can't have the same upgrade ever occurring in them. So that gets like the HH-12 maybe okay at that point. The T-21, like that's an okay gun, right?
Yeah, I will say the first time we did have to change it because I was playing Empire and Evan was playing Rebels and there's multiple core units, right? So I was like, we can't repeat any single unit. And Evan was like, oh God. And then I realized when I posted it on the Facebook, a lot of people were like, well, I play clones, so I'm out. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't play clones or droids, so I didn't really think too much about it. But yeah, so I got the challenge. And I think on our Patreon, we have a podcast behind the Patreon wall called The Fifth Trooper After Dark. And on that podcast, we did a live show, which we do once a month. And I let the Patreon subscribers pick my list. And Evan went, man, my list was fine. It was all right. It struggled, obviously, because it's a Highlander list. But Evan's was actually, you did really, really well with your list.
Yeah, I went 2-1 and lost by a point in the final round. So I almost 3-0'd with it. And actually, you know what? It's funny because so I was looking at it, right? And I was going to do Empire, and I built so many Vader lists, but he's just so bad, right? I was just like, well, I want a Highlander list. I don't want to just scrub out, right? So I'm like, I'm going to do this challenge of myself. It's like X-Wing has a format called hyperspace. Where like, hey, all these ships and upgrades not in the game. These are the ones that are.
Yep.
This is cool. So I'm like, well, that's fun. X-Wing has the luxury of doing that because it's been out for 10 years or something at this point, like 8 years. So it's got so much stuff that it's okay if they do that. Legion, not quite there yet, right? Not everyone can do a standard format. So I'm like, well, I don't want to be as greasy as I normally am. So I'm going to put some restrictions on myself. And that way I have to build within walls. And that makes it more interesting to me. So I'm like, well, Sabine and Clan Ren, that seems okay. Take a bus, I guess, right? This all sounds really good, right? Then I'm like, think of fleets, one vet with a gun, one rebel thing with this. And like, it ended up being like rebels can do it pretty well. Like they can make I got like 10 acts with like a bid. I had like a 10-point bid or something. And the guy who I played against the last round had like a 36-point bid. So I'm like, okay, yeah, you got me. Like, he's one of the good guys from Buffalo. So I was like, oh, well, that's a problem. But honestly, I would never have generally played Clan Ren, just because I have like a Hoth thing I do. Like vets, I got all that stuff is painted, and I didn't want to, paint again. But man, they're real good. Turns out getting a free aim or a free dodge every turn from Sabine is pretty okay. So actually I had a really good time. The list was pretty good. But yeah, like if you're kind of bored with Legion, or you're like, man, I don't want to play like, Rex Star, but it's tough because I can't just tell myself not to do that. When I start building like clones, I'm like, ATRTs, oh, they're awful. Barks, so I started like adding stuff in. I'm like, nah, just phase 2's Rex and let's go. So when you put these restrictions on yourself, it actually makes it like more fun to me, because now you can't just do the best thing, right? You gotta like kind of.
Well, and I think for me, to get out of that, because I definitely get into that competitive mode with Legion as well. And for me, a lot of it was while I was building the list, I was like, I knew it wasn't great and I was going to struggle. But with that, I was like, but who cares, right? What am I what are my objectives of going to this tournament? And really, this was our first tournament back since pandemic, really. And we were like, besides having some boys over here at the compound to play, but like, other than that, this was our first tournament back. And I'm like, what my objective is to just go have fun and go see all the guys I haven't seen in forever, and just be able to like talk and shoot the shit without like worrying about playing right or keeping my eye on what my opponent's doing right. Like I was just there, and honestly, I came back and Rachel was like, "How was that? Like, how you doing?" Because usually I'm like, either like jacked because I won or like really depressed because I lost some stupid and I hate myself for doing something dumb. And I was like, honestly, it was a blast. And she's like, I've never heard you say that coming back from a tournament, And so for me, it was just like, I don't know, it was like a complete weight was lifted off of me. And I was just like, yeah, man, I'm just here to play. Like, this is awesome.
It was just nice to not like, so as personalities in Legion, there's like always this kind of rock on your shoulder where like I have to do okay, right? Like it's whether or not you actually have to. It's like, well, hey, you're Jay from the Fifth Trooper podcast, from the Notorious Scoundrel podcast. You really should probably, in your mind, you're like, I should probably break even, have a positive record. No one else cares. Maybe like no one else is like, oh, Jay 03, he's garbage. Don't like it's not like that, but like in my mind, there's always that like, well, I have to like win, right? Whether or not I want to. And the best thing that can happen to you at a Legion event, because I like to win, I like the swag, man. FFG makes those sweet cards and I want them, right? That's just what it is, right? I want the dice, I want all that stuff. And the best thing that can happen to you is if you lose your first game. And then you're just like, okay, otherwise every game you're sweating. You get that final game and you're like, oh God, don't lose here, right? Like, so either you lose your first game, that's probably the best thing that could happen to me. And I'm like, I'm bummed out. I'm like, shoot. But I'm like, you know what? Doesn't matter anymore. Time to like try to convince my opponent to like team up to fight the other guy's table, right? I'm like, come on, we're not going to win anything. Let's go. Like, let's 2-on-2 these guys. So that's kind of a thing in my head. So it's making these restrictions. It's not like an excuse to lose, but it's just like, you know what, man, if I do this, I'm putting on these shackles on my list building, and it takes a lot of like the angst away from like the game where I'm just like, you know what, man, at this point, I'm running like, 3 rebels with bloop tubes, right? Like, who cares, right? Like, whatever.
I think it does a couple of things, right? Like, and if we wanted to spin it into like a more less about losing and more about positive things you get out of it is you add things to the list that maybe you normally wouldn't have played with before. And you also see different synergies that kind of work together that maybe you didn't see before, right? And like one of the things for me, and I'll go through my list real quick, it was Imperial Officer with electro binoculars, Bosk with Hunter, Seize, the initiative, targeting scopes, Shore Troopers with T-21, a mortar, Storms with the RT-97C, a Storm Captain, an offensive push, Snow Troopers with an Ion, R4 Astromech Impact, I had a E-Web with an overcharge generator, I had a Dubak with Tenacity and T-21 Blaster, and the ATST with the Armor Pilot, Mortar, and Link Targeting Ray. And one of the things that I hadn't really thought about in my mind competitively was how good Dubaks were.
Yeah,
right? Like
turns out they're okay.
Yeah, especially if you have other stuff going on. Like, so I had Bosk, the ATST, and the E-Web that were all kind of keeping my opponents distracted while the Dubak would like spur around and flank and like start just eating through like squads of B1s or whatever it was, So I think if you're listening and you're super competitive and you're like, that's nice, Evan and Jay, like, yeah, I'm going to play for fun at home, but I still want to be competitive.
Yeah.
I think if there's like tournaments that don't really have a ton on the line, which none of them do right now, because there's no OP structure or anything like that going on. I think that what you can do is play a Highlander list and just throw units in you've never played before, because I think it's going to open you up to a bunch of different synergies and play style that maybe you didn't see before.
Yeah, because you can get into Echo Chamber real easy, right? Especially on like if you're in a Discord or something else, everyone's like, nope, this is the only way to play X and Y. But yeah, like Sabine always been like good, but like Op Luke exists, so sorry, Sabine. Like I'm the best one of the best operatives in the game. But like I remember like playing her a few times, Sabine with Clan Ren, and I don't think they were ever called bad. I don't think that's the case. But I just didn't like, because I played a lot of Inferno with Iden, and Inferno's kind of bleh, like they're fine.
Yeah.
They're okay. But like Sabine's like with the truck, dude, first up, truck busted. OP, please nerf. Truck's insane. Every time like one clan run go down, truck just drives up, like throws a med pack at them and they get back up. And I'm like, yo, this is okay. I get it. Right. Because I'd always heard the truck was bad. And I'm like, yeah. And until I actually played it, I'm like, I'm handing out at the beginning of a round. I had like 5 or 6 tokens out with Vigilance, the truck handing out 3 aims, and Clan Ren's retinue before I even played a card. I'm just like, what is going on? This is bonkers bananas. But like I'm a believer in Clan Ren, so now my lists are like Sabine, Clan Ren, and whatever else I want to take until we get that whatever AMG announced, right? Like some of that new stuff.
Yeah, and I mean,
Whatever.
in the meantime, right, while we're waiting for all of that and waiting for the US to get even Yoda, I mean, the rest of the world has Yoda and Wookiees and everything, but
yeah, that feels bad.
Yeah, whatever. So, in the meantime, we got to find alternative fun ways to play, which leads me to Rule of Cool. So, Evan and I, when we're playing a lot, especially even in bigger tournaments, I think Evan and I both have the Rule of Cool, which is two couple different things. It's like, hey, if this is something cool that would be fun to do in the game, let's do it. And then I think the second part of that is, hey, if there's something like your opponent missed a trigger or something that they absolutely don't have to, like, it isn't a must, it's more of a may, but they're like, oh shoot, I forgot to take that. Like letting them take that. Right.
But Jay, if this were any other game, I'll let you take it, but I can't. Sorry, man. Top table. Sorry, dude.
Right.
This were any other game.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a great way to play. And I'll give some examples of it. One of my favorite things, Evan, that you've ever done, is you were playing before T47s were good. You were playing a Hoth list, and with the T47s, and what you were doing was Evan would take the T47, go behind the enemy lines and kill the snipers. And when he did that, he would draw a little line on the side of his T47 in front of his opponent. Got you, snipers. And I always loved that, because the people on the other end, like, you think it's kind of like a dick move, but it really isn't, because on the other end, they just laugh because it's hilarious, right? And I mean,
yeah,
now it's different because T47s are really, really good.
Yeah, but now it's like, oh, you're playing T47, where it used to be like 150 points of like didn't surge, didn't do anything.
Yeah. And so, but finding these little like things in the game that can be super fun, and like interacting with your opponent is like the key to all of this, right? Like going to these tournaments, like, sure, you can go just to win, and you can go to just get the glory. I don't even know, without an OP structure, I don't even know what the glory is anymore, right? Just knowing that you won and maybe getting some store credit depending on the store.
Yeah.
Right? Like, wouldn't you rather have a good time and have a positive experience, and then also create a positive experience for other people that you're playing? Like, yeah, especially absolutely. If you're like an OG Legion player, what's the one thing that we want? We want the game to continue. What's the only way that happens is if people are playing.
Yeah.
So if we go and like stomp people at these tournaments, they're never going to come back because they're going to have a terrible experience. But if we go ahead.
I'll say, it's like the, I equate it to like Sea of Thieves, right? So when I'm playing Sea of Thieves and you see a new player, you don't just go and like give them the gubbins, right? Like pound them to the ground, because, hey man, I look at miniature gaming as well as like a dad game kind of thing. So I got my sugar-free monster. I'm like taking sips and I'm like, 2 rounds. The lawn's getting long. So when you see someone new coming into it, you want to give them like a good first experience.
Yeah.
So I remember like, so to go quick do my Sea of Thieves reference. So you just like, you don't just sink them and take their stuff. You want to join Alliance, you get some gold. Like not everyone on here is just going to like slap you, but you should always watch out for it. Right. Like it's, when they're playing and they're like asking you questions like, hey, should I do this? And be like, well, if you do that, I'm going to shoot you from like here, here, and here. So I wouldn't, right? Like, look, it doesn't matter. Like, so like, I'd rather them learn, get better, it can be a self-serving reason too, because you want better training partners when you get to a bigger, like when things get sweaty again, right? You can like, but if you want to take it as the altruistic way, is like you just want them to have a good time, man. Like they bought the game, spent a lot of money to buy the game because Legion's getting more expensive now.
Yep.
They painted them. They built them. They painted them. They came to an event. They paid to play probably, right? And there's nothing worse than like getting 0-3'd and then having like lousy opponents who are just like I'm like, man, I can't tell you how many times I've played limited viz and someone's played like maximum firepower on that turn. And I'm like, hey man, it's limited viz. And they go, oh no. You see like the life drain from, like, no, just play something else. I don't care. Like,
right.
Like, what? I'm like, dude, whatever. Like, it doesn't like you forgot, right? It's not like you made like last turn, you shot the wrong target. And I'm like, gotcha. Right. No, it's like you just made a mistake. So like, let people just enjoy their first experiences. Cause if they get beat real bad and they play lousy people, they're not going to come back. Right. Like, so it's you have to be the ambassador of your community. So when people play me, like we had a guy show up to one of his first tournaments and his list was bad. Like it was like, 6-7 acts. And I had like a 12-act rebel list. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just take 2 of my sniper teams out before we even play. Because he didn't have any. And I'm like, you're not going to have fun. This was back when they were infinite range. And I'm like, I don't even have to engage you, right? Like, I can just sit back. It was like VATS or something too. Like, so I'm like, I'm going to take these guys out. I'm not handicapping me because I think I'm better, but it's because you didn't know what you were doing when you built that list.
Yeah. And
then you're coming into my really sweaty list. So like, it's not fun, right? Like I don't want you just to like feel like you didn't get to play. Like, let's go roll dice. Like we're here to paint models and roll dice, right? So it's you have to do those like those altruistic things to keep the community going. Because like, man, I've gotten into my first couple 40K games were miserable, like absolutely terrible. Like they just destroyed me, and I'm like, well, that was like $800, like that's I'll never play this again,
right?
So like, and I never went back. But Legion, like a few of us, you and I and some other folks started it, so we got to get in ground floor. But I didn't want that same thing to happen to somebody else, where they just get like demolished with a miserable dude, and you're like, okay, well, I could have spent my Saturday like so many different ways.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing too, right? Like in this game in particular, the age range and audience is much wider. So you're getting a lot more people that like myself that have families and like multiple jobs and are trying to like do something just fun for themselves on the weekend. And like you finally get the okay from the wife, like, okay, we don't have any plans this weekend. Like I can go, I can do that. Right. And then you just get like miserable the whole Saturday. And you're like, why am I doing this to myself? And then like, I know you and I, like towards the end of the reason we did season 2 of the Fifth Trooper, where we switched to other games, it was because Evan and I, frankly, were just getting tired. And like I think we were coming back from tournaments going, why are we doing this to ourselves? Like the whole ride home, just being miserable, driving hours to go to a tournament and then just like, and all the way home at like 11 o'clock at night going, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing this to ourselves?
You're on your feet all day.
Yep.
You weren't having a good time. It's a 2 to 3 hour drive for some of these events we had to go to one way. Yep. And you come back and then you're burned out Sunday just because you're tired. Like it's not like if I told you, hey, you just got to stand in one spot and think, like, it's not like, oh, I could do that all day. I'm like, yeah, you can, but it definitely burns you out. So Sunday, I'm just like, what am I doing? Right. Like,
and then you tie everything else into it. And then being like hyper greasy and competitive about it, like just drains you even more. And you're just like, all right, man, I can't like. And so I would say that last tournament we went to, I just came back and I was like, that was great. And I had I mean, we all drove together out there and we had a great ride home. And like I got home and the next day I felt good. And I was like, man, that was really cool. I met a ton of cool people that I've never met before and got to talk to them. I got to like take moments and, Matt, who runs Just Games, he's a buddy of ours. Like, I love talking to him. So it was just like cool to just like go. And it's like, years ago, I used to play cornhole a lot with buddies, right? And then one of my friends is like, hey, I'm in this cornhole league. Do you want to come play with me? I'm like, yeah, sure, because I'm thinking like a beer and pizza, like cornhole. And no, like everyone took it so serious and it made it miserable. And I was like, I'm never playing this game again, right? And I felt myself getting there with Legion. And so I'm like, okay, I got to stop and reset. And I think you see that in the content that we put out. Season 2, we started moving to other games because we were trying to reset and see what else was out there. Season 3, I did just a beginner's guide to Legion because I was like, okay, let's just talk to the guys just starting. Like, I want to make sure they get in. And now I think we finally evolved to Super Frieza or whatever Frieza ends up getting to in Dragon Ball Z, and so that's where I feel like I'm not like I've been evolving through the podcast and finally found, oh yeah, you know what? My favorite times are when Evan and I are sitting on the back porch, like smoking a cigar, having a drink, and just talking about like what we like and don't like about stuff. And I love Legion. I do. I love playing it. I love creating stuff for it, and so I want to keep that love alive, and I want to keep it alive for you, the viewer, as well. Right, Evan?
But no, it's real. Like, it's I just, after I play some other games where I don't take seriously, like I'm sure we'll bring it up at some point, like Kill Team, new Kill Team. Like, I built like, turns out like the worst faction by accident, but like I don't care. I'm like, yeah, man, look at these little Gene Stealer cultists. Look at these little guys, got a little whip coming for you. Like I was playing and I'm like, oh yeah, this is just better. So in the future, like I'll do something, like I'll build restrictions for myself and things just because it's fun to me. But it's just like X-Wing has, like I said, the standard format. That's really fun to me because it's like your box to build is so small. And so you start doing things that aren't optimal, but because nothing's super optimal, it's like it could be okay. Right. Like, it's not bad in this little sandbox. So maybe we'll talk about more things we do, or maybe like core units only, like something like that, right? Like no special forces.
I think we could come up with challenges for not every cast, but in the future we definitely come up with challenges for ourselves and for our viewers, and see where we go.
Land speeders only.
All right, I'm gonna skip over this one, Evan. We're gonna move to hobby time.
Okay.
So this section we're hoping to do, I'd like to do this every episode if we can. I know we'll run out of stuff, but what I wanted to talk about is hobby. We get a lot of good reaction from hobby, but also like, how do I hobby A, on the cheap, and B, quickly? And so Evan, before we start talking about some of our quick and easy terrain guides, I wanted to ask you, what is, if you can think of it, what's your most favorite table you've ever played on, and why?
Oh man. So I'm going to be a little self-serving in this.
All right.
And it was the toy table I made for Northeast Open, actually, because it just nothing like it, right? Like when I was building it, I just thought it was cool and fun, and it brought the spirit of like, hey, it's a game, and you're playing on how it was built, for those who don't know, is you can get those foam mats for like kids' rooms that are all the different colors.
Yep, they're like little squares. They're kind of like the gym mats you can get. They're larger, they're gray, but they're little color ones for kids' rooms. Yep.
Yeah, and they're exactly a foot apart. So you do like 4x6, and then you put one of our our sidebars down, and you're done, right? And it works good. And then we put like Jay and I were looking at, like, I bought like a Jenga set and I dumped it around for like barricades. We had one of your son's Thomas thing set up, so we had like a Thomas set up
train track going through.
Train track on the side. We had we bought a couple like children's like play toy, like I built a castle, like a couple like other activity games, so it was all over the thing. And I played on it a little bit, like when we were testing it, and I'm like, yo, this is great. And then I'd have people come up to me and say like, hey, that was actually really good, like everything was very defined, like no like fuzzy terrain, like, oh well, the laser pointers, it's just like, that is hardcover, that is light cover, right? It was just very like set up in easy to understand and play on. And I thought that was interesting because it reminded me of there's a game called Toy Soldiers where you're like a tower defense game where the idea is kids are playing in like their room and they've got like the World War I guys coming and then you're trying to fend them off. And they had like a G.I. Joe Cobra expansion, which was really cool. But like that's the feel I was going for. And I actually really had a lot of fun with that. So I know it's kind of self-serving to say my own board, but I've played on a lot of good ones. Like the problem is some boards can get too cinematic, like too much going on. So it's like there's no room for vehicles, you know. Actually, the one, if I had to take a step back, it's actually the Jetta board you have. That'd be my my like non-me favorite board because it actually feels like a city, right? Actually fighting in a city, which is cool. Like not too much done. But no, I think that'd be those two, my top two for that.
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to go opposite of you on this one. And one of my favorite ones I've ever played on was by an artist called Jim Martin. We've talked about him before on the cast, and Jim is amazing. He's out of the Albany area up here in New York, and he did a Scarif table.
Oh yeah.
And it was at I don't know, 2-3 years ago now. It was at Adepticon for the whatever they called it, the high command. He also had it at Star Wars Celebration as well. They had asked him to bring it to that. It is a beautiful board. Now, caveat, not the greatest technical Legion board to play on, okay? And I think Jim knows that, and I hope he doesn't take offense to it, but it wasn't ever technically the best board to play on, but it was the most immersive and to use your word of things you don't like, but cinematic. It was the most immersive cinematic board I've ever played on. And I was just, he had the ship from the Rogue One ship, he in the middle of when they land on Scarif, and they've got, he had the docking bay, he had the whole thing, trees, sand, like it wasn't on a mat. He actually hand built the ground and everything. Like it was beautiful. And it's funny, the ship he built, we had him on the, I think, season 1 of the Fifth Trooper podcast, and he kind of explained, but the ship was built by hand with some printed parts, like pieces that were 3D printed, but overall it was like foam core and board and stuff like that he had built it out of. And I always loved that table so much that I had him build me an ATST hauler, right, which is one of my favorite pieces of terrain that I have here. Again, he hand built it. So before 3D, he doesn't, he 3D prints some parts that like make it easier, but he's an artist at heart. So he's literally just hand building all this. But yeah, that was one of my favorite pieces to ever play on, just the cinematic feel. Right. And and the beauty of it. Like, I didn't even care that it functionally wasn't the best for Legion, but I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Well, that's like part of Star Wars, right? Is like when I play on tables, like I see really thematic ones and I like them, but as a game, I don't. But if I didn't, I guess a lot of that was taken when I was playing the game pretty intensely. I'm like, well, I have no idea what that train is. Let's define that. Like now I'm just like, yeah, whatever. This is heavy cover. Yeah, sure. It doesn't matter. Like, so now I might like playing it on again. I might have a different opinion of it. But like a lot of those boards I was playing when I was really like, quote unquote, being sweaty, greasy about playing. So I'm like, oh, I can't tell what any of this is. I can't fit, like, this isn't regulation, but yeah, no, the Scarif board, I remember like looking over, people are just coming, they didn't even play the game. They would see it, walk around Adepticon, and they see that board, then they walk over to that and take a look at it, right? Because it was just so cool.
Yeah. Well, and that was, I remember when we had Northeast Open, for those of you that may be new to the podcast, we had our own event before the great pandemic, and planning on doing it again, hopefully one day. But basically I had Jim bring up his Scarif board for that. And I remember a couple guys were playing classic Rebel versus Empire, and the Empire player had ATSTs and was like, had those on the table, and he had lights in them and stuff. And so I remember somebody came over at Northeast Open and was like, what is this? And like we were telling them, the Star Wars Legion, it's a tabletop game. They're like, where did you get all this? I go, well, the figures you buy and you put those together. Like, it just blew their mind. And that's how we attract new players, right? So,
well, that's the power of the Star Wars IP, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I'm getting into Warhammer now, just kind of a side thing. And like, does this guy mean anything to you? Right? Like, he's a cool looking model, but you see him on the table, you're like, well, okay, that's
for those of you audio only. It was some sort of weird alien 6-shooter with
it's a gene stealer called guy who's got 3 revolvers. Like, he looks really cool, but if you're walking by, it's like, okay,
yeah, all right,
right. But if you see,
I have no emotional connection to that,
right. But you see an ATST or an airspeeder or Darth Vader or Luke, like, oh, well, what's this? Like, that was the problem with the end of X-Wing 1.0. Was none of the the classic movie ships were any good, so they weren't played. So there's lots of random stuff. So it just looked like generic space game to a lot of people. But with 2.0, you see like an X-Wing and it's Luke's X-Wing, or the TIE Phantom's Vader and it's TIE Phantom TIE Fighters versus Luke, Wedge, and Biggs on the Trench Run team, right? Like, and that's like playable, right? And both teams are playing, and you're like, oh wow, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, like that's cool, right? Like, it's Star Wars attracts a lot of people because the IP is so strong and it means a lot to a lot of people. So when that's the power of it, so sometimes it can be a crummy game, but because it's Star Wars, you're in, right? Like, end of X-Wing was miserable 1.0, but like every once in a while you'll see someone with like the Ghost and people are like, oh, the Rebels, right? Like, what do I do to play this? And I'm like, don't. It's like, like, don't play this game right now. You're not gonna have fun. Like, but that's the power of it, right? Like, you could see a tank in 40K, and if you have no idea, like, space tank, all right. But if you see an ATST, you're like, whoa, hey, I know that, right?
Well, hey now.
Well, hey now.
All right, so we talked about our favorite tables. Now let's talk about some quick and easy terrain guides. You want to do yours first?
My one spray. So I hate painting terrain. Because it's like, I'm actually starting to enjoy painting models. When I first started getting the hobby, I really hated that. I'd find any excuse, any cost I could do to have someone else do it for me. But it creates a lot of ownership. And I know we talked about this a few times in season 2. There's something about buying, building, painting that it creates ownership over it. So you want to like do it. So with the terrain, specifically in Kill Team, I've been building terrain for, I didn't want to paint. It was like broken citadels and like beat up junk, like work. I mean, it looks cool. It looks cool, but like, like, I don't want to. I just need to be like, look interesting to the eye. It's easy to see on the board, so it's not like my character's line of sight doesn't just make it easy. So I went to Lowe's. I bought a $5 can of silver, a $5 can of gold. I laid out each table of terrain. I sprayed them each different color, so if they get mixed up in a box, you can just be like, well, that gold goes on gold board, silver goes on silver board. For Kill Team, low key is really what Skirmish should have been, and we'll get into that later. But it's just on a small board, smaller than a 3x3. It's like a 22x30 or something. It's really tiny. Easy to put a table out. Like for $120, or actually 150 total, I got like another board, just like a mat and all the terrain from Death Ray Designs, and make a cool like Cyber Tokyo mat. And that's a whole table that looks great. That's not like, trying to fill a 4x6 is expensive and can be hard to make it like the way you really want it. Cause you see other people's tables and you're like, I see some of your tables, right? That mud, your Minman mat.
Yep.
And like, that looks awesome, but nope. Like I just can't make that. Right. So smaller scale tables are easy to do, but even then, like, for example, I got one right here.
For our audio listeners, go to
YouTube. So it's just how Death Ray does it for their terrain is they just say, hey, that's woodcut like you make with our stuff for laser, our laser cut for our dice trays and things like that. But it's actually just a wood normally, and they just say just put a coat of, go to Home Depot, buy the $5 can of Rust-Oleum gray, and because it's a little bit thinner, you can still get the lines, so you can still get some detail. This took me like 2 minutes. I built it, sprayed it, and then you put a little thing on it, and then bam, I've got a building with like a billboard sign.
Oh yeah.
And that's like, I actually bought cyberpunk stickers to put on here because it's supposed to be
nice.
I couldn't find anything. Yeah, it's gonna be kind of cool. But yeah, this took me 2 minutes to build. When you put it down and put some stuff on it, like even stickers or whatever, like, 'cause it looks like graffiti, no time, right? No effort. And I think what happens is it's very easy to get caught in the, you see some of these gorgeous boards and you're just like, I can never make that. Right. And then you kind of get frustrated. And then you're looking around, you're like, well, I'll just use books and tin cans and get by. But it doesn't take a lot to make terrain look good. And what I'll give GW a lot of credit for is, which I'm really shocked that Legion just hasn't done. Legion makes a terrain piece. Like, here's the down shuttle, here's the down ATST. That's not a board, right? That's like, or here's the thing. Like, you can't, even with the terrain pieces they give you, that's no way going to fill a 4x6.
Right.
But with what GW does for especially kill teams, you can just buy a box that's a whole table. So all the terrain, the mat, everything for $100, and then you just spray it a color, and then you're good to go. Like, and it looks okay. It looks pretty good because they put their time into it. So it doesn't take a lot to make a table look okay. I've gotten weird compliments on that silver board. I'm just like, you're like, yeah, it looks like Mad Max. I think, yeah, use it. I'm like, yeah. Oh yeah. I was like, that does look okay. And if you put like a wash, you can put as much or little as you want to. If I put like a wash on it, it would add a little bit more depth to it.
Yeah, I had an idea for you. I'll tell you now. So there was I was watching a video on Kill Team, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but Devin and I are playing Kill Team a little bit now. And I was watching a how to play video, and what they had done was, like, different colors, but they basically put like a base color on it. They put a wash, and then they basically just took chunks of it and like painted it like red or blue or like, and it looked from far away. You were like, oh, whoa, that looks really good. And then as they zoomed in, you're like, there's no detail on this, right? And that's kind of the thing about miniature games, which is really great, is half the time most people are going to be 3 to 4 feet away from whatever it is. So you really don't have to get deep into detail. You can do a lot like quicker work.
I guess my biggest takeaway from my whole ramble is, don't compare your work to the internet, because the internet, there's always a guy who does it for a living who will blow yours out of the water, right? But it's what you feel happy with. And honestly, that, like, you can buy hobby paint from a hobby store. I recommend doing for your local, but if you just like train like that, like, Lowe's $5. They even had, like, honestly, I forgot to tell you, they had glow in the dark spray paint, and I'm like, if it wasn't like neon green, I was like, oh, I get that for the buildings. I could put a black light up and it like all glows. So I had a madman moment for a minute, but like $10 and the terrain, like, I just covered the whole thing and it looks fine, right? You'll probably see some pictures of the boards. We have a Kill Team event coming up. You'll see some pictures of the boards when they're done, that you can kind of put some, if you're listening, you'll be able to see what I'm kind of like talking about. And honestly, they look good. Like, for just playing the game, like, lets you put more time into painting your models, which you probably want to do more than painting your terrain. Because if you look at the box art on the back, like that guy at GW who they pay hopefully well, reports say not great, but hopefully well, looks like, every tire is black and it's got little divots in it, and then the stop, like, no thank you. And I'm like, I have no interest in doing that. So just get on the table so I can play. Like, don't kill yourself over terrain. Just like, there's a lot of companies out there who make cutout, like Death Ray. It's my current favorite little guy, or Legion, Train Studio, or what's the one that we used to get those downed X-Wings from?
Oh, Legion Terrain.
Yeah, Legion Terrain. Yeah, those guys. Like, you can just get that, honestly, spray it a color, or they'll even paint it for you.
Yeah, they have still painted versions. Yeah,
you can just buy it painted, and like, that's awesome. What a great like resource. Like, and it's not even that bad, like, to have them painted for you. I bought a couple and it looked like the price wasn't too bad, and for the time it saves me, and I would just buy a piece of paycheck. Like, you don't need to like go crazy, right? So you can build this great table, and you don't have to, like, there are ways to do it without killing yourself or like beating yourself up about it, that you can get a good looking table and be like very, very confident about it.
Yeah, for sure. So here's my tip. Mine is hey, how do I do something for under $20?
Yeah, that's a good tip.
Okay. So what today is going to be forests. So most of this is stuff that you can just find at like a Walmart,
Okay.
And basically, so what you start off with is we all have cardboard, I would assume, cereal boxes, cracker boxes, like any sort of boxes, right? Save your cardboard, or even use shipping boxes from Amazon, right? As your base. You're going to need salt. You can use kosher, you can use Himalayan, or you can use regular table salt. You're going to need some brown paint, acrylic paint. You can get that in the hobby aisle at Walmart or any multi department store like that. You're going to need the only two things that are really tough on this list are flocking. So that's the grass or snow, but you could get those for like $3 to $5, a little round of it. And then the other thing is some sort of trees. These trees you can generally find Walmart, Target, Home Depot, if you have hobby shops like AC Moore, if they're still around, Michael's, or Hobby Lobby, usually for like Christmas or like holiday table decorations, or like any of those little villages that they do, they'll generally have some sort of trees or pine trees available. You can go get some of those. And then what you're going to do is you're going to cut shapes, ideally rounded edges, right, out of the cardboard. You're going to take your brown paint, you're going to put it on a little paper plate, mix in some of that salt that you have, use some sort of cheap brush, put it on the cardboard, let it dry. That's going to give you this grainy dirt feel. You're going to then take some Elmer's glue, water it down a little bit, either spray or use a paintbrush to put it on top of that dirt that dried on top of that. Sprinkle some of your flock on there, let that dry. And then figure out your trees. So you can, if you're going to use trees from like a Walmart Christmas village or whatever you're going to use, you can then glue those on, or not glue them on, maybe create little bases out of cardboard for them so that you can move them. And now you have area terrain for Legion.
Great. And that's actually very underutilized and underrepresented area terrain. And actually, to your point, we're about that time of year where those villages come up. There's even Halloween villages now. Like you can wait till those, because if you go in and buy terrain, they're going to be under like the diorama area, and there's usually a little bit of a premium on those sometimes. But if you wait till, like he said, the holidays, like I know they do Halloween villages are a thing now, but Christmas especially, in December, like those are like bargain cut, because they just want you to, like, it's all margin, right? Cost them a penny to make, so it'll sell for $5 and think they're like, getting one over on you, but you're really getting one over on them because all the other stuff you're having to spend on it. So yeah, no, that's really good. Honestly, is trees always make a board kind of pop, and to get them for that like a decent price and make something pretty easy is pretty good.
Yeah, and it's cheap, it's fast, it's stuff you can get. I mean, you could get it on Amazon if you just want it shipped, but it's stuff you can get at your next grocery trip. So that's a quick, dirty, cheap way to get area terrain and get some terrain out.
And I like using textured spray paint too. Actually, I had a couple. So my first use of that was I'm like, I'm a genius. I'll buy these foam boards and I'll make I think it's like BattleTech. And I took the spray paint, the textured spray paint with sand. It looked good, but so I sprayed it and the boards just went like they turned it on themselves. I'm like, well, there goes like $30. But on something more stable, like wood or something, texture spray paint kind of cuts a lot of corners too. And it, I'm all about that for terrain. And you could absolutely do that. I like this stuff more because it's you could get a little bit more. You have more control. It looks better too.
Yeah, and you have a little more control over it, which is nice.
Sure.
So there's some quick, easy terrain tips for those of you just getting started. All right, we got a few minutes here, Evan. Let's talk some nonsense.
Okay. What kind of nonsense do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about Kill Team.
Okay, so hot take. I guess not really that hot. New Kill Team is good. It's fun. It's easy, and it's really what Skirmish should have been. You buy like 2 squads of like Skirmish should have been really like. You buy 2 things of stormtroopers. You got a little sheet to name them. Like, this is X2305, and he's my rocket guy, and he's got this ability, right? And you play with like 10 models on a small board, and you just have a good time, right? Yep. Back and forth activation. So how Kill Team works is to build a list, you just pick a faction, and there's not even any points. It's like, all right, you get a leader, for this kind of guy, and you can pick 5 of these guys, but only one of these guys. So you build a list, and you don't need like an app. I mean, that's another conversation that GW just needs to get with current year argument, but you don't need an app. You just pick out your books, like this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and then you put them on the board, and it's back and forth activations, which they totally grabbed from Legion or whatever thing. You move one guy, move, shoot. The other guy moves his guy, move, shoot, grab objective. 4 rounds. It's over in like an hour. Like we're getting to the point where we can punch out a game in like an hour and a half, right?
Yep.
And we're still like learning the game. It's quick, it's fast, and I'm playing it, and I'm like, this should have been right. Skirmish. Like that was this should have been skirmish.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And yeah, I think, listen, it's GW products, so the models are all beautiful. Again, for $200, you get everything you need.
Oh yeah, especially the Octarius starter. It's Orcs and Deathcore Krieg, which the models look super dope, and you get 2 full armies.
Yep,
full armies, not even like the half. Like, well, you need to buy 3 more core boxes before you can play. No, just get 2 full armies, a board to play on, so you don't even need a mat, and then all the terrain for it too, plus all your tokens, plus the rule books. Like, it's really like, normally I don't agree with a lot of their pricing. I think they're always like, well, you'll buy it because you have to, right? Yeah. But this one actually feels kind of like a deal, right? I'm like, especially
I felt so, yeah. Because if you look at what comes in the Legion box for $100, right? You can barely even play the game, and there's no terrain, and good luck, and you don't even get the full rules. So it's kind of odd, right? And I'm like, for $100 more, you're telling me I get 2 full armies and enough terrain to like have multiple configurations on a table, plus all the cardboard, plus my movement, plus like plus dice. Like it comes with all the stuff that Legion comes with, but more. And you can just play out of the box, and I can play a full game. Basically
an actual real game.
Right. Yeah. I bought the starter, and like I'm just gonna play orcs because they're my speed. And I don't even have to do anything else. Like we're about to play a game coming up and with a couple other people, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm ready. Like I don't feel like I have to do anything.
You're missing
else.
Out, right?
Like I got the deck. There's 2 deck of cards in there. There's all these tokens. They come with this was my favorite part, frankly, the water slide decals for all the units. So it's like, oh, you mean I just have to put like a base coat of paint on these, like simple paint, and then put a decal on it? I'm good to go. Like, so good. We can talk about someday the things I don't like about it, but for the most part,
I do have a list of like things I think are a little convoluted, but
I don't think it's a silver bullet of gaming, but it's it's just when you play stuff like that and you realize like, oh shoot, yeah, this would have been nice
for the archetype of thing it's fitting into. Like, hey, don't have time for a full game, like a 3-hour, because setting up a board for Legion, playing and then taking it all down is like 3 hours, right? Let's, even if you're both pretty fast, maybe 2.5 for an hour and a half game. It's a pretty good fit. Is it the best? I don't know. I haven't played them all, but it's pretty good, especially available to get. And there's the next core set coming is Sisters of Battle and Tau, which are like the gunline guys versus the female. Really broad strokes. I know I'm like overgeneralizing, but female Space Marines versus the gunline aliens, and then they have got like, so they've got, and that comes the full thing of terrain too, all the same stuff. So it's fun, and if you play it, even if you go to like a store and do a demo, I really think there's something to like making your own like Legion version of it. Like, hey, we could figure this out where it's like maybe you get 2 things of stormtroopers, but I get 1 thing of clones, and the clones are like double as good because that kind of makes sense thematically, but because I have less, I don't get as many, something like that, right? Like I think there's room there. And I was playing, and I'm like, man, I wish this was Legion so I could be playing Star Wars and characters I care about more than like my generic like space alien guys. But if you get a chance to try it, do it. But in your mind, think about it like, how cool would this benefit as Legion? I guess that's my like weird take on it, is like, if they took a lot of the rules, like the back and forth, smaller scale, like 12 miniatures, like, man, that would have been neat, right? Like, I guess that's my big takeaway is like, just play it, give it a try at a buddy's house or like the store demo and think like, man, if this had been Star Wars, like I'd be all about skirmish, because right now I don't like skirmish at all. But
it's a cool heroes mode, right? It's and ideally with AMG in charge, and they have Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Yeah,
maybe they'll put a version of Legion out that's like that, which will be great. So
yeah, no, I'm like that small scale is like it, because like skirmish hits that weird like a little bit longer than you want it to be. Not units don't feel quite balanced in there versus a full game, and like they try to use the same rules but different cards. It's like this one is just 40k is its own thing. Does not play like Kill Team at all. Kill Team is its own thing, does not play like 40k much at all.
I feel like they wanted skirmish to be like that, but it always felt like it just got phoned in. Like it was like, we need a skirmish mode, here you go, oh, here's the cards, no, you can't buy them, print your own, I guess. And you're like, what?
Print your own, peasants.
Okay. I mean, that's the thing that always killed me about the silhouette too, right? Like we do the silhouettes, but like how does a normal person who doesn't listen to us, maybe isn't part of the community, decides one day to play, they're like, oh, there's an RRG, let's start there, and then they're like, okay, and then silhouettes is something I have to print out and cut out, and it's like, what? Like, you know what I mean? Like they don't even provide that. You're like, what the hell is going on?
Like not even like a $5 or $10 pack with like silhouettes and maybe like a cool sticker pack or so, right? Like something for like even like a very, very basic,
you would think,
thing. Yeah, that's kind of a bummer, because you it's easy to forget that we live in a bubble. Like if you're listening to us, you're in the bubble, right? You're in the Legion bubble. You probably know what Invader League is. You know what the Scoundrels, what they do in their high level talk, and you listen to all these other podcasts, and you're in the Discord. You're doing all the stuff. But there's a ton of people who just walk in and be like, oh, Darth Vader. They buy them. Turns out I've been buying these. I got enough to play. And they come to their first event, and like, I carry, because I have our silhouettes, and they'll be like, oh, what? They come to their first thing, and I'm like, here, just take. I've got extras. Take mine. Like, please, just don't worry about it. Right? You need one, and there's no way to get one besides the third party market, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's weird. But guess what, Evan?
What?
I think it's time to wrap up our very first episode back.
About that time, Gov?
MICKEYMOUC. Hey, thank you, everyone, for listening. If you made it this far, you're our favorite listener. If you didn't make it this far, then you're not, and you don't even know. So
perfect.
Take that. So we are going to hopefully be doing this weekly. Fifth Troopers back. Rule of Cool, beer and pizza podcast, talking about all the fun stuff in Legion and how to make this game fun again.
So I love how you say beer and pizza. And I think, were you looking for beer and pretzel?
Yeah, but I realized that's
like
what we started. I really like pizza better, though.
All right.
Like pretzels
that's fair. I just want to make sure
are fine.
We're both on the same page.
I just really like pizza, Evan.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening. Join us next week. And until then, be like Evan the Raccoon and eat 2 dinners and 2 desserts every chance you get.
You got to stunt on people while you can.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Stay rad.
Join us next week for another edition of the Fifth Trooper podcast.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.